As Snowpacolypse 2011 continues, we bring you a story about another kind of apocalypse, specifically, Terry Pratchett's Nation. I discovered this book through a review that Hank Green did on his other channel, Hank's channel, which this video will incidentally be a response to. And my experience with Terry Pratchett up until this point has been rather limited. I actually dated somebody for a while who convinced me to read a couple of novels in the Discworld series, and while they were fun to read, I didn't really understand what was going on, and so after a while I just kind of stopped reading them. But I think a lot of people associate Terry Pratchett's style of writing with the Discworld series. That kind of tongue-in-cheek, satirical, winking at the audience type of writing. And in that sense, this is not your typical Terry Pratchett novel. The trademark Pratchett wit and humor are still there, and there are even parts of the novel that are satirical, but that doesn't encompass the entire novel. And actually the parts of the novel that were satirical were the parts of the novel that I enjoyed the least, though I still enjoyed them. It follows a character called Mao, who comes from a tribe of strict and numerous traditions, ones that he has never thought to question. Mao is also the last survivor of a cataclysmic wave that has wiped out his entire tribe and everything that he has ever known. And so now, for the first time, he is really seriously beginning to question those beliefs that he has always held. And even though the religion is not familiar to us, the questions that Mao is asking are. For example, if the gods exist, why did they allow this to happen? The other character in this novel is one who is also a survivor, Daphne, who is the last survivor of a shipwreck. The ship washed up, coincidentally, on the same island where Mao lived. And Daphne comes from a vastly different world from Mao. She is the daughter of a nobleman, she was raised very prim and proper and all this sort of thing. And so when the two of them meet, they kind of have to reconcile their two completely different worlds. And yet Daphne is also questioning traditions, but specifically she is questioning the way that she was raised by her rather conservative and overbearing grandmother. And she's very intelligent and very scientifically minded, so she's able to look at a lot of the traditions that Mao and his people practiced and kind of find practical reasons for them. And even though these two characters are very different, they form a great relationship throughout the novel because they're both battling things bigger than they are. Mao becomes the new leader of the nation, even though he technically has not yet become a man. And as more and more survivors of this catastrophe come flocking to this island, Mao feels responsible for them and starts to build a new nation. And he sees it as his mission to make sure that nobody dies because of this catastrophe, or because of the gods. And one of the things I like is that even though this novel is about questioning traditions and assumptions, it also is very careful to say that not all traditions and assumptions are bad. And in fact, we find that a lot of the traditions that are very deeply rooted in this community have very good reasons behind them. And actually, I think Hank put it best in his review that this novel is both about challenging assumptions, but also challenging our assumptions about the assumptions. And we get to see the progression from the unquestioned faith to the unquestioned questioning of the faith to the rational reasoning of the faith. And there aren't answers at the end, but Mao and Daphne both kind of come to the conclusion that there don't need to be answers, they just kind of need to accept that maybe there won't always be answers. So, I love this book. I absolutely love this book. It's definitely the best book that I've read in 2011, though granted it's also the fourth book I've read in 2011. I'm finding more and more that some of the best books that I've read are also the hardest ones to articulate in a book review. This is the type of book that I really can't even explain, you just have to read it. But suffice it to say that everything about this book just works. The characters, the story, the humor, the relationships that the characters build, everything just works. And this is also one of those books that it really doesn't matter what your preferred genre or reading is, everybody who reads this can get something out of this book. Hank Green rated this novel 72 stars, which he said was the highest rating that he could possibly give it, and so, on the worth meter, I am also going to give it the highest rating I can give it. Yes, this book is going on to the ultimate recommendation list. Because of the message, the beauty of the story, and also just because the universality of the writing. So if you haven't read Terry Pratchett's Nation, I would not only recommend, but I would implore you to go seek it out and read it. And that's it for this review, so until next time, this is Matt Guyon reminding you to stay warm and don't get lost in the snow. Still looking for questions for my question video? I'll probably do that video on Friday, so leave more questions in the comments.